You know, as time passes, things change and we change. And I hope you remember what I always say: if something doesn't work for you or has stopped working, switch things up. I'm no exception. So there are things that I have changed, and there are things that I no longer have the need to do in order to improve my English. As funny or shocking as it may sound for some people, I still work on my English. There's so much I still don't know, but I have definitely moved forward. My English has improved significantly. And things that worked for me 2 years, a year, or even half a year ago aren't working anymore. But I'll also share things that I still do or have started doing. So I'm going to be referring to a couple of my videos where I shared my study routine. If you're interested, I'll link them in the description. One more thing. I'm not saying that those things aren't effective and you shouldn't do them. It's just there comes a time where you either need to change something or you realize that you no longer need them. The first thing I no longer do is I don't write down unknown words I want to learn. Writing down just one word by itself is worthless for me, even if I go back to that word later. I need context. Without context, it's just not going to stick with me. Of course, there's different techniques to help you memorize new words, like come up with sentences using them or come up with a story using them. But they only work if you follow through with them. But do you really come up with sentences for every word you write down? If you do, then bravo, you rock. But writing by hand nonetheless works like a charm for remembering things. And what I do is I write down phrases that I find interesting, including phrases with words I want to learn and want to be able to use them, or phrases that I find difficult to pronounce and I want to be able to say easily and naturally. But I don't just write them down. I practice saying them until I feel that I've got them. Usually, those are the phrases that grab my attention when I watch something. A huge plus of doing this is that you're using material that has already been put together. You're copying native speakers, thus making sure that the vocabulary you use sounds natural. Furthermore, I have a journal where I write about my feelings and thoughts, in English, of course. I did that and still do. I write posts for my Instagram in English and I script my videos in English. These things have already become habitual for me. And let me remind you once again, when you write in English, you're not in a hurry, usually. You have the time to think about grammar and the best or more suitable wording, and find appropriate synonyms for the words that you know you use most often. And it's a great way to learn new words. I no longer practice my pronunciation every day. I used to practice my pronunciation every single day as much as possible, and the biggest chunk of it I did in the morning. I would practice tongue twisters, do my speaking exercises, work on the sounds, words, and word pairs that were difficult to pronounce. Then also during the day and when we watched something, I would always shadow. I still practice my pronunciation these days, but do it much less, and I'm not that obsessive for 2 reasons. One, it's become easier for me to speak English because I practiced my pronunciation so that I wouldn't stumble over my words as much as I did previously. And 2, I've become more relaxed about it, and not because I think that my pronunciation is perfect and I have nothing to improve anymore, but simply because I'm not chasing perfection any longer. Now I practice because I truly enjoy honing my skills. I no longer check every other word when watching or reading something. I still come across words I don't know all the time, and I do check their meanings when I want to or need to or am curious about them. Even so, it's become so much easier to remember them and their meanings, and also it's become easier to guess the meanings based on the context. I no longer check in with grammar rules every time I want to say something or write something, or when I've heard or seen an interesting sentence structure, because that's what I used to do. My brain works in a way that I always want to know why and how. I used to read and try to memorize grammar rules and tense formulas like I was getting ready for an exam or something, but that didn't quite work for me, although it wasn't worthless. When you're trying to understand how to use certain grammar constructions, you need examples and context. And then you need to use that. And then you need repetition, because the more you use something, the better you start to understand that and the better you memorize that. So what I really needed wasn't reading grammar rules, but rather implementation of those rules, the actual usage. When you hear something in context and understand what is being talked about and then use it yourself, that's what helped me the most. Now I just speak, and when I feel like something didn't sound quite right, I think for a bit and correct myself, or just let it go and make a mental note of my mistake. Try to analyze it and try not to make it again. And when I write something, my grammar, for the most part, isn't that bad. But I am able to do that now because I did check in with the grammar rules after all. It was time-consuming and exhausting and boring in a way. But the thing is that you're not going to do that for the rest of your life. There comes a time when you become used to the language and your brain accumulates enough knowledge and starts actively using it. And suddenly it becomes easier. You just need to push through this difficult period and stay consistent. There are certainly times when I do need to check in with grammar and read those grammar rules once again because I still don't know a lot of things or might not remember something and I still make mistakes. But it's not at all hard for me right now. I barely even notice that I'm checking something because I have built really strong habits over the years which no longer seem demanding or are no longer difficult. They are just part of what I automatically do. Listening and immersing yourself in the language is, of course, a big part of it. And speaking of immersion, I know that this is a tough one. That's why I want to suggest that you try Lingoda. They are sponsors of this portion of the video. Lingoda is an online language school. Their classes are available 24/7 and they offer a highly immersive learning experience. And this is what we need and are looking for, right? And this is what a lot of people find difficult to implement. How do you even immerse yourself in the language not being in the country where they speak that language? And how do you structure your study routine? That's why I think that Lingoda is a perfect place for this, as you'll be learning with native speaking qualified teachers who will be able to answer all of your questions about grammar and the language. You can have one-on-one or small group classes that are created by a team of linguistics experts, and there are 5 lesson types: speaking, communication, vocabulary, grammar, and reading. So this holistic approach allows you to improve on everything you need. As you can see, they offer a monthly subscription and marathon courses. A monthly subscription is a great option to stay consistent and to always keep your target language in a good shape. Whereas a marathon is a perfect option for someone who needs to refresh their knowledge or needs quick and efficient results, which, by the way, as a reward and motivation for completion, you can get some cash back. Lingoda has courses suited for everyone's language level and needs. You get to pick how often you take classes and which topics you cover. You cannot go wrong with this one. Moreover, if you decide to try out Lingoda, you can use my discount code to get 30% off on the marathon courses or 30% off the first month's payment for a monthly subscription. You'll find all the links down below. Now back to the video. In my video about my study routine, I said that I used stickers on which I wrote words, idioms, and so on that I wanted to memorize and stuck them everywhere I could see and read them all the time. I no longer have the need to do that. Now I just check the meaning of the word online once, maybe twice, and now that's enough for me to remember it. Again, I guess over time your brain just gets so used to English that it memorizes new information easily. I still watch and read 90% of the content I consume in English. I search for all information in English, thus increasing my reading time in English. I still mostly follow native speakers or people who post in English on social media. Over time, you become so accustomed to doing all of this, and your brain adapts to English so much that when you think in English. And when you want to say something in English, you just know how to say it because you've heard it enough times for your brain to just suggest it to you. And needless to say, I still speak English with my son all the time. But till this day, I have a lot of aha moments, oh, that's what it means, or that's what they said, whenever I watch or hear something that I have watched and heard before, but for some reason couldn't make out. Okay, guys, take whatever you need from the information I just gave you, improve yourself until the next one. And don't forget to give us a like.